Okay, let's take a look at the carbon cycle. I'm going to start with the atmosphere. So here's our atmosphere. And this storage, the atmosphere, tends to be carbon dioxide and methane are the two kind of major stores. And of course, leaving the atmosphere, it is going to then be taken up by plants, right? The CO2 would be. And so that is, of course, the process of photosynthesis. And plants are going to take carbon dioxide, turn it into organic molecules. And those organic molecules might be eaten, through feeding by animals and other consumers, right? And then in kind of your most basic carbon cycle, both the plants and the animals do cellular respiration, and that's going to send it back to the atmosphere, right? Now, both plants and animals will die and excrete things. So I'm going to draw this arrow and label it death and excretion, right? There's my dog barking at the neighbors. And that is detritus then, right? This looks like a lot like the energy cycles you've been doing. And that detritus then will be decomposed. So this is decomposition, right? And that's going to be decomposed by the decomposers. And that might be bacteria or fungus, okay? And of course, decomposers also die and excrete, and they also carry out cell respiration. Now, this is kind of the basics when we're just talking about the organisms, but actually, if the detritus doesn't get decomposed, and that can happen in areas that have very low oxygen, because you need oxygen to carry out cell respiration, in very low oxygen and heat and pressure, that detritus can actually be fossilized. And on land, like in a terrestrial ecosystem, that turns into the fossil fuel of coal. And in terrestrial, it's coal. And of course, we know what us humans do is we're going to extract that coal, and then we're going to, store it in a power plant. I'm not quite sure, like power plant, right? And then we are going to combust it because we're going to set it on fire to make energy out of it. And that sends it back to the atmosphere as the CO2. All right. So this is kind of your basics of your storages, right? And your transfers and transformations. So the flows, okay? Anywhere where it's actually changing form, it's going to be considered a transformation. The extraction maybe, since you're just moving it from one place to another, maybe that's a flow. Feeding, I guess if you're just taking it from the plant and putting it in your mouth, then I would consider that a flow. But all the rest of these have some sort of transformation. All right, now this one, I've kind of done the basics on land, but actually the CO2 in the atmosphere can actually dissolve into the ocean and become just, carbon dioxide that's dissolved in the ocean or, bodies of water. But I'm going to say ocean now because that's probably the biggest. And actually, I could go back here and kind of show that this is the soil, right? So a lot of this is happening in the soil. There's a lot of carbon stored in the soil as well as a lot of carbon in the ocean. Now these CO2 molecules that dissolve in the ocean, of course, it's then taken in by, algae. So the producers, like algae, right? And that is, they take it in through photosynthesis. And you kind of get the same sort of the feeding with the animals in the ocean, right? And then, of course, you're going to get, for both of these, we could, you know, draw our arrows here for cell respiration. Okay, and now these both can turn into sediments on the floor of the ocean based on, actually I should make that the box, sediment detritus. And this, of course, is death and excretion as well, right? So same as these arrows here. And that sediment and detritus can be fossilized into two different things. So it's going to be fossilized. So it's going to be fossilized into limestone and oil, like oil and gas, right? And into those things. And of course, these could be extracted. I could bring this oil and gas arrow around here. And the limestone, of course, we dig that out as well. All right, so you need to be able to put together, I would say most importantly, the basics here of this terrestrial one, but do realize you have dissolving and things happening in the ocean, and there's some differences in the fossilization process when it's at the bottom of the ocean versus when it's packed in under the soil.